For 35 years, Ilda Vance, a woman now navigating the quiet dignity of my early 60s, had lived a life defined by the subtle, insidious erosion of self. Every time I reached out for the meager allowance my husband, Thomas, begrudgingly dispensed, it felt less like receiving funds for our household and more like begging for crumbs from a master's table. $1,500 a month. A paltry sum that he presented as if he were bestowing a king's ransom, an act of supreme generosity, when in reality, it barely covered the essentials. It was a constant, humiliating reminder of my perceived worthlessness, a financial tether that bound me to a life of servitude he had meticulously crafted. I had been the full-time housewife, the silent manager of his sprawling, chaotic household, and the devoted caregiver for his wheelchair-bound mother, Beatrice. My days were a relentless cycle of tasks, each one a testament to my fading autonomy. From dawn till dusk, I navigated the labyrinthine demands of a home that was never truly mine, and a family that saw me not as a partner, but as a readily available, endlessly compliant resource. The silence of the house often felt heavier than any noise, a quiet accomplice to my diminishing self. One sweltering Tuesday in late August, a day like countless others, I simply had enough. The invisible chains that had bound me for decades snapped. It wasn't a sudden, explosive break, but a quiet, internal revolution. I stopped. I stopped dusting the antique mahogany furniture that Thomas prized more than my peace of mind. I stopped cooking the elaborate, multi-course dinners Beatrice demanded nightly. I stopped pushing Beatrice's heavy wheelchair through the echoing halls, listening to her incessant complaints. I stopped trying to anticipate Thomas's every whim, every unspoken expectation. The house, once a meticulously ordered machine humming under my diligent care, began its slow descent into chaos, a fitting metaphor for the turmoil brewing within me. Dust motes danced in sunbeams through uncleaned windows, dishes piled in the sink, and the scent of stale air began to permeate rooms that had always smelled of polish and fresh flowers. Then, with a newfound resolve that felt both terrifying and exhilarating, I did the unthinkable. I drove our 5-year-old daughter Lily to Thomas's gleaming downtown office in the heart of our prosperous Midwestern city, and left her there, not with malice, but with a firm note explaining that he was now solely responsible for her care. The audacity of it, even now, makes a faint, almost defiant smile touch my lips. The shock on his face, a fleeting glimpse of pure bewilderment before the reinforced glass door of his corporate fortress swished shut, was a tiny, sweet victory. I imagined his perfectly tailored suit rumpling as he fumbled with Lily's small hand, his perfectly coiffed hair disheveled by the sudden intrusion of domestic reality into his pristine professional world. I drove away from that imposing glass tower, away from the life I had so meticulously maintained, and straight to the nearest public library. The scent of old books and quiet contemplation was a balm to my frayed nerves. I had been a brilliant architect in another life, a woman whose innovative designs once graced city skylines, but that life had been carefully dismantled brick by brick, replaced by the mundane realities of domesticity. Now, sitting amongst the hushed whispers of turning pages, surrounded by the comforting scent of knowledge, I started rebuilding. I found a job listing online, not as an architect, but as a project manager for a small, budding construction firm. The pay was modest, a fraction of what Thomas earned, but it represented something far more valuable: my freedom. A tiny spark of my old self, long dormant, flickered to life. I began living my own life, a life where my worth wasn't dictated by the amount of dust on the mantel or the sharpness of my husband's tone. Within days, the tremors of my rebellion reached Thomas. The house, indeed, had fallen into utter disarray. Beatrice, accustomed to my round-the-clock attention, was increasingly neglected, her imperious cries echoing through empty rooms. Thomas, utterly overwhelmed by the simplest tasks, from remembering Beatrice's medication schedule to preparing a basic meal, found himself drowning in the domestic chaos I had so effortlessly managed for years. His perfectly ordered corporate world was colliding disastrously with his utterly neglected personal one. He came crawling back, as predictable as the sunrise, his voice laced with feigned tenderness, begging for forgiveness. But I had seen his true face, the one etched with contempt, the one that viewed me as an expendable asset. His pleas were hollow, ringing with a desperate self-interest that only solidified my resolve. The thought of returning to that gilded cage filled me with a physical revulsion. One evening, staring at the empty balance in my newly opened, entirely separate bank account, A stark testament to my financial vulnerability, I mustered the courage to send him a message. A simple text, direct and uncompromising. Thomas, are you busy? It's time to transfer this month's living expenses. Lily needs new school supplies, and I need groceries. The message vanished into the void. No reply. Just a chilling silence that spoke volumes, louder than any angry retort. Lily, with the innocent, trusting eyes of a child, tugged on my hand, her small voice a hesitant whisper. Mommy, can I have cake? Please? My heart ached. We weren't a poor family. Far from it. Thomas's corporate career had blossomed, showering him with lavish bonuses and promotions as a senior executive at a major tech conglomerate. Yet here we were, my daughter forced to tread carefully, to ask for something as simple as a piece of cake with a hesitant politeness that broke my spirit. Her small hand, clutching mine, felt too fragile, too trusting in the face of my own powerlessness. Mommy doesn't have money right now, sweetheart, I said, forcing a smile that felt brittle on my lips. Let's wait until Daddy gives me the money, and then I'll take you, okay? Lily, always understanding, always so patient, simply nodded and stopped insisting. Her quiet acceptance was a dagger to my soul. How had it come to this? How had I allowed myself to be reduced to this state of financial dependency, where my own child's simple request was a luxury I couldn't afford? The indignity burned, a constant, low-level ache. I sent Thomas another message, a more polite one this time, laced with a desperation I despised and hoped he wouldn't detect. Honey, are you busy? If you're not, could you transfer this month's expenses when you have a moment? Lily really wants some cake, but I don't have the money. Mentioning Lily seemed to finally get his attention. The phone buzzed, a voice message. His tone was dripping with irritation, with a condescension that scraped against my raw nerves. Got it. Stop nagging. I'm busy, okay? I'll send it later. His words were like a physical dismissal, a verbal slap. Reassured, or perhaps just too weary to fight, I left it at that and went to the kitchen to start cooking a meager dinner from the dwindling contents of our pantry. The silence in the house, broken only by the distant hum of the refrigerator, seemed to mock my struggle. Ilda Vance was not always this woman, broken and subservient. Decades ago, I was Ilda Hayes, a vibrant, ambitious architect, fresh out of university with honors from a prestigious East Coast design program. I had a small, independent firm, Hayes Architectural Innovations, and my designs, innovative and daring, were already gaining recognition in Boston's competitive architectural scene. My portfolio included modern, eco-friendly residential complexes and a critically acclaimed redesign of a public library in a revitalized urban district. My life was a blueprint of boundless potential, unencumbered by the suffocating weight of domestic expectation. I relished the long hours, the creative challenges, the satisfaction of seeing my visions rise from paper into concrete and steel. Then I met Thomas Vance. He was a rising star in the burgeoning .com world, charismatic, effortlessly charming, with a quick wit and an engaging smile that seemed to light up every room he entered. He swept me off my feet with grand promises and a vision of a shared future where our individual ambitions would intertwine. He spoke of building a life together, a partnership of equals, where we would conquer the world, side by side, creating a powerful, dynamic duo. Love, in its initial, blinding rush, painted over the subtle red flags, the fleeting moments of possessiveness, the casual dismissiveness of my own career as a charming hobby. We married quickly, a whirlwind romance culminating in a lavish ceremony in a grand, historic mansion. A ceremony that seemed to promise a fairy tale ending, a life of unblemished happiness. The first few years were a honeymoon of sorts, a golden blur of shared dreams and nascent success. Thomas's career at a rapidly expanding tech firm soared, bringing in an increasingly substantial income. We bought a beautiful, sprawling home in an affluent suburb of Chicago, a place of manicured lawns and hushed, tree-lined streets. I continued my architectural work, though I scaled back to part-time to accommodate our new life. But then, Beatrice, Thomas's mother, suffered a debilitating stroke that left her wheelchair-bound and increasingly frail. Her once imperious personality curdled into a volatile temper. She moved in with us, her presence casting a long, unyielding shadow over our previously harmonious home. Her demands, often unreasonable and always loud, echoed through the elegant suburban house. Housekeepers, nurses, and aides came and went, a revolving door of exasperated professionals unable to withstand Beatrice's relentless, often cruel, tirades and constant need for attention. Each departure left a void, and a new layer of stress. Thomas, ever focused on advancing his burgeoning tech career and maintaining his carefully crafted public image, saw a convenient solution in me. He began to subtly, then overtly, pressure me to quit my thriving architectural practice. "Ilda, darling," he would say, his voice a honeyed persuasion, his hand gently stroking my hair. "This is too much for hired help. My mother needs family. She needs you. If you stay home, you can manage the household, oversee her care. Think of the peace of mind. I'll hand over my entire salary to our joint account. You'll be the true mistress of this household, free to pursue your passions when the time is right, after Beatrice is more settled." His words were laced with an irresistible allure, a vision of domestic bliss and financial security that felt like a sanctuary amidst the rising tide of Beatrice's needs. He painted a picture of me managing our burgeoning wealth, investing wisely, building a beautiful family life. Foolishly, blindly, I yielded. I traded my drafting table for a duster, my blueprints for budget sheets, my professional identity for the title of Thomas's wife and Beatrice's caretaker. I believed him. I truly believed his promise of partnership and shared prosperity. In the beginning, he seemed to keep his promise. His substantial paycheck landed in our joint account every month, without fail. I managed the household with the same meticulous precision I had once applied to architectural designs, transforming chaos into order. I even found a quiet satisfaction in creating a perfectly running home, seeing it as another form of complex design. But over time, the promises began to curdle. Subtly at first, then with increasing clarity. He started making excuses. "Ilda, I need more for business entertainment. I need to maintain relationships with superiors. The market is tight. Darling, expenses are up." Each excuse was a tiny chip, eroding my access to our shared funds. Eventually, subtly, insidiously, he took the primary salary card back. From then on, he only transferred a meager sum to me each month for household expenses. At first, it was $4,000 or $5,000, still a decent sum for a household manager. Then it dropped to $3,000. Eventually, it dwindled to a pathetic $1,500. The initial financial freedom he had promised transformed into a carefully controlled allowance, a leash rather than a lifeline. Now, even with such a small allowance, he would delay transferring the money, holding it hostage, as if to remind me of his power, my utter dependence. Without that $1,500, I was utterly powerless, unable even to afford medicine for my child. It was a cruel irony. The woman who once commanded architectural projects worth millions now couldn't buy a simple pain reliever without permission. I swallowed my pride, a bitter pill, and borrowed a few hundred from a kind friend, a former colleague from my architectural days, to cover Lily's emergency. The humiliation burned, a raw, festering wound that never quite healed. I would lie awake at night, the weight of my lost career, my lost independence, pressing down on me, suffocating me with regret. That fateful Tuesday, after Thomas's condescending voicemail, I was still reeling from the shock of his dismissal when Lily, my precious daughter, collapsed. Her small body, usually so vibrant, was racked with a sudden, violent stomach bug. Her skin was clammy, her eyes dull with pain. Panic seized me. I scooped her up, her light weight feeling impossibly heavy with my fear, and raced to the emergency room of our local hospital. The emergency room buzzed with the frantic hum of monitors and hushed voices. Doctors and nurses moved with a detached efficiency that seemed to mock my rising panic. I sat there, clutching Lily's feverish hand, as the minutes stretched into an eternity. But when the nurse finally called us, asking for payment details, Thomas still hadn't sent the money. I didn't even have enough to pay for Lily's initial consultation, let alone her medication. My hands trembled as I dialed his number again, my pride obliterated by a mother's primal fear for her child. As soon as Thomas picked up, he snapped, his voice a whip-crack of anger that echoed in the busy waiting room. "Didn't I tell you I'm busy? What part of that don't you understand? You're like a debt collector, so annoying. I'll send the money when I have time, stop bothering me." Then, with a chilling finality, he hung up on me. The nurse looked at me sympathetically, offering a payment plan, but the shame of my situation burned hotter than any fever. I had to use the small amount I had borrowed from my friend just to get Lily seen by a doctor. The humiliation was absolute. Crushing. When I finally returned home, emotionally drained and financially depleted, a small bag of expensive medication in my hand, I found Thomas still absent. He was probably working late, oblivious to the crisis we had endured, immersed in his world of corporate spreadsheets and power lunches. But Beatrice, who had been napping all afternoon, was wide awake and furious. The moment she heard me come in, her voice echoed through the house, sharp and cutting, a siren of complaint. "You worthless woman! Where have you been? It's this late and you haven't made dinner. Get in here and take care of me. What are you even doing all day?" Swallowing my frustration, a familiar, bitter taste, I helped Beatrice out of bed and into her wheelchair, the weight of her helplessness pressing down on me, both physically and metaphorically. I wheeled her into the living room, the space I had once meticulously cleaned and decorated, now a canvas for her endless complaints. She glanced around, noticing the empty house, the untended clutter, and her anger flared again. "This house is a pigsty, and Thomas will be home soon. Are you planning to starve him? All you do is lie around here. Honestly, I don't even know why my son married you. You're nothing but a lazy, useless servant." Her insults barely registered anymore. After years of hearing the same words, the same venomous barbs, I had grown numb. When I first married into this family, Beatrice had been just as harsh. But her words back then would send me running to Thomas, crying and pleading for him to intervene. But Thomas never truly stood up for me. Instead, he would soothe me with kind words or buy me small, meaningless gifts to calm me down, never once attempting to confront his mother. "She's in a lot of pain because of her condition," he would explain, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "That's why she's irritable. Please try to be patient, for my sake, for our family's peace." And so I endured, year after year, slowly suffocating under the weight of their combined disdain, my spirit slowly withering. Later that evening, at dinner, the silence at the table was heavy, punctuated only by the clinking of cutlery. Lily, still recovering, picked at her food, her small face pale. I gathered my courage, a fragile thing that trembled in my chest, and asked him again, "Honey, can you send me this month's living expenses now? I'm out of money, and I need to buy groceries tomorrow. And Lily's medication needs to be refilled soon." Instead of transferring the money, Thomas responded with a sarcastic sneer that cut me to the bone. "You women have it so easy. You don't even have to work. You just sit at home waiting for the men to bring in the money. Then, as soon as the month starts, you nag non-stop. Do you have any idea how hard I work to earn that money? I'm supporting everyone in this house." He said it as if I had chosen not to work, as if I had always been this dependent, this leech on his hard-earned success. He had begged me to quit my thriving architectural career, to become a housewife, to care for his mother in our house. It was his demand, not my choice. The hypocrisy was a bitter taste in my mouth. As if his words weren't enough, Beatrice, ever the co-conspirator, chimed in, throwing fuel on the fire, her voice a grating whine. "Exactly. My son works so hard every day, and you're always pestering him for money. You think he's made of money? You should learn to spend less. You're just a burden, Ilda. A useless burden on his career." I tried to reason with them, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. But a growing certainty was beginning to bloom within me. I've been budgeting as tightly as I can. $1,500 a month barely covers groceries, utilities, and Lily's basic needs, let alone any unexpected expenses like a trip to the emergency room. Thomas slammed his plate down, cutting me off. The clatter echoing in the tense room, his face contorted in a mask of manufactured indignation. "What do you mean 1,500 isn't enough? How much more do you want, you greedy woman? I'm telling you, you're the most ungrateful person I've ever met. You just sit around all day doing nothing, and then you complain about not having enough money. You're useless, Ilda. Completely useless." Every word felt like a dagger, each one stabbing deeper than the last, twisting in the open wound of my humiliation. At first, I thought I could let it go, just endure it like always, swallow the bitter pill of their contempt. But then Beatrice crossed the line. While picking at her food, she muttered, her voice low but piercingly clear, directed at Thomas as if I weren't even there, "And that useless little girl of yours. Why are you wasting money buying her cake? What's the point? You'd be better off saving that money to help my son. She's just another mouth to feed. a drain on your resources. That was the breaking point. The insult to Lily, my innocent, understanding Lily, was a catalyst that ignited the fury I had suppressed for decades. My daughter, who deserved nothing but love and protection, was being called useless. That was unacceptable. I couldn't hold it in any longer. Enough, I shouted, slamming my plate upside down on the table, the porcelain clattering loudly, echoing through the stunned silence. Forks and knives skittered across the polished wood. I turned to Thomas, my voice a furious torrent, raw with years of buried pain. You act like $1,500 is a fortune, like I'm asking for millions. You tell me not to nag you, but you never send the money unless I do. Do you know how humiliating it is to have to borrow money just to take Lily to the hospital when she's sick? Because her own father is too busy to care? My finger pointed at him, trembling, my voice rising even further, powered by righteous indignation. Thomas, I had a job once. I was independent. I built a successful architectural firm. You're the one who begged me to quit, to stay home and care for your mother in our house. Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I enjoy relying on you? Being treated like a servant? Then I turned to Beatrice, my voice dripping with the anger and resentment I'd suppressed for years. And you? You're always complaining about me spending your son's money. Have you ever thought about why I'm even here? If it weren't for you, do you think I'd have quit my job to become your nursemaid, your personal assistant, your round-the-clock caregiver? Do you have any idea how much it would cost to hire someone to take care of a paralyzed old woman like you? $3,000 or $4,000 a month? Minimum. And here I am, doing it all for a measly $1,500. You should be grateful. You should be bowing at my feet for the sacrifices I've made. A wave of relief, potent and exhilarating, washed over me as I let it all out. Years of suppressed anger erupting like a volcano. My chest heaved, my breath coming in ragged gasps, but I felt lighter, unburdened. Thomas and Beatrice, on the other hand, were furious. Thomas's face was a mixture of shock, disbelief, and a dawning realization that his carefully constructed narrative of my worthlessness was crumbling. "Ilda, have you lost your mind?" he shouted, his voice laced with venom, his face a mottled red. Beatrice, her mouth agape, looked as if she'd been slapped, her eyes wide with unadulterated fury. I glared at him, my eyes burning with a newfound clarity, a steel resolve settling deep within me. No, Thomas, I've never been more clear-headed. From now on, I'm done. I'm done asking you for money. I'm done managing this house. I'm done caring for your mother. You and Lily will take turns raising her. I'm not doing this alone anymore. Let's see how you manage without me holding everything together. Let's see how truly useless as I am. Ignoring their sputtering protests and Beatrice's shrill, indignant complaints, I grabbed Lily's hand, whose small fingers gripped mine tightly, and retreated to my room, the sanctuary that was mine and mine alone. The door clicked shut with a satisfying thud, muffling their enraged shouts. I expected Lily to be scared, to be upset by my outburst. Instead, her eyes sparkled as she looked up at me, a tiny, defiant smile gracing her lips. "Mommy, you were amazing today. You were like a superhero." I froze for a moment, a surge of overwhelming love and pride washing over me. But then the practicalities of my decision hit me. "But if I start working again, sweet pea, I might not have as much time to take care of you." "That's okay, Mommy," she chirped, her small voice unwavering, her innocent eyes filled with understanding. "I'm already 5. My teachers will take care of me at school, and on weekends, I can take care of myself, and we can still have fun together, right?" Her words, so simple, so full of innocent strength, broke me. I hugged her tightly, tears streaming down my face. Not of sorrow, but of profound gratitude. The only good thing to come out of my desolate marriage to Thomas was Lily, a bright, thoughtful, and loving little girl, a beacon of pure, unconditional love in my otherwise bleak existence. That night, holding her close, feeling her steady, trusting breath against my chest, I resolved never to look back. I would no longer lift a finger for that house, for that family that had systematically stripped me of my dignity and reduced me to a shadow. I thought Thomas and Beatrice might last 3 days without me. It turned out I'd overestimated them. They didn't even make it through the night. At 10 p.m., I had just gotten Lily settled in my bed, her small body finally still in sleep, when Thomas came looking for me. He seemed awkward, disheveled, the perfectly pressed corporate suit now rumpled, the sheen of his corporate facade visibly cracking. He extended a check towards me, his hand trembling slightly. Here's this month's money. Also, my mom had an accident. Can you go clean it up? She's quite a mess. His voice was strained, laced with a desperation he clearly tried to hide. It seemed that having a wheelchair-bound mother who relied on adult diapers for everything made it impossible for Thomas to manage even one night without me. All those times I'd silently taken on the burden, without complaint, without a single word of appreciation, cleaning up their messes, literally and figuratively. He must have thought it was easy for me. He must have assumed I would always be there, a compliant, ever-obliging wife, ready to clean up his messes, both literal and metaphorical, with a smile. Well, not anymore. His compliant, ever-obliging wife was gone for good. I pushed the check back into his hands, my voice calm but laced with an icy finality that belied the turmoil within. Oh, I wouldn't dare take your money, Thomas. Otherwise, you and your mother will just keep calling me useless. From now on, I'll get a job and earn my own money. As for this house, your mother, and everything else, you figure it out. I'm done. Thomas's brow furrowed, his face contorted in a mixture of anger and bewildered frustration. He was unaccustomed to being refused. Come on, Ilda, don't be so ungrateful. I'll add another $1,500 to this month's budget. $3,000. Just stop throwing a tantrum and go clean up after my mom. This is ridiculous. He extended a new check for $3,000, a desperate bribe for my servitude. I returned it to him again, untouched, letting it flutter to the floor between us. Thomas was livid, his eyes blazing with fury, his face turning a dangerous shade of red. Enough already. If you keep this up, don't expect me to give you another cent. You'll regret this, Ilda. You'll come crawling back. I had already made up my mind. His money meant nothing to me anymore. His control, his condescension, his casual cruelty, those were the chains I was breaking, and they were far more valuable than any sum he could offer. I shoved him gently but firmly toward the door of my room, my heart hammering with a mixture of fear and triumph. Bye-bye, Thomas. Enjoy your new responsibilities. Fuming, he stormed out of the room, pacing and cursing under his breath in the hallway. But he had no choice. He had to go clean up after Beatrice himself. Let him. The worst was yet to come for those two. I could hear his exasperated sighs. Then the rustling of supplies from the bathroom, followed by Beatrice's renewed, indignant wails. It was the music of my freedom. The next morning, I awoke to a silence I hadn't known in years. A blessed quiet that permeated every corner of our small shared room. Thomas was already gone, probably off to work, escaping the domestic nightmare he now inhabited. The moment I opened my door, Beatrice's familiar, shrill shouting began again, piercing the morning calm. You lazy woman? Sleeping in until now. Are you trying to starve me to death? Go make me breakfast. And where is Thomas? Is he abandoning me? I laughed, a cold, hard sound that surprised even myself. A sound utterly devoid of the former fear and subservience. Beatrice, I said, my voice steady, devoid of emotion, resonating with a newfound authority. Do you still think I'm the same daughter-in-law you can boss around? I made it clear to Thomas yesterday. I'm done. I won't take another penny from him, and I'm not taking care of you anymore. Whoever's mom you are, that's their responsibility now. You're on your own. I walked past her open door, deliberately ignoring her, heading towards the kitchen to make Lily and myself a simple breakfast, a symbol of our new, independent life. Her enraged screams followed me, but they no longer held any power over me. My journey of liberation had only just begun. The small project management job I had secured was a lifeline, but it was just the first step. My mind, once constrained by household budgets and care schedules, now buzzed with forgotten ambition. I dusted off my old architectural textbooks, devoured industry journals, and networked relentlessly. My former colleagues, initially surprised by my sudden reappearance after decades of domestic invisibility, were at first skeptical, then curious. My innate talent, honed by years of meticulous organization and problem-solving in a different arena, quickly shone through. I demonstrated a pragmatic approach to complex problems, an intuitive understanding of construction logistics, and a quiet, unshakable determination that impressed my new boss, a kind but discerning woman named Clara. Within months, I was promoted, then given more complex projects, and within a year, I was managing large-scale commercial developments, proving that my skills had not atrophied, but had in fact been strengthened by the challenges I had overcome. I was back. Not just professionally, but truly, fiercely. Ilda Vance, architect. Meanwhile, Thomas and Beatrice's lives descended into a spiraling farce. Thomas, utterly incapable of managing the household and his mother's complex needs, hired a series of exasperated caregivers. None lasted more than a few weeks. Driven away by Beatrice's tyrannical temper and Thomas's penny-pinching and unrealistic demands, the household expenses skyrocketed, draining his corporate bonuses. His pristine home became a disaster zone, filled with unpaid bills, unwashed laundry, and the lingering scent of neglect. His once immaculate suits were now often rumpled, his hair disheveled. His focus at work suffered, leading to reprimands, missed deadlines, and a gradual, humiliating decline in his once illustrious career. His colleagues, once admirers of his ambition and polish, now whispered about his sudden dishevelment and erratic behavior. The meticulously crafted image of the successful corporate executive began to unravel, thread by thread. Beatrice, deprived of my consistent, patient care, deteriorated rapidly. Her health worsened, exacerbated by the inconsistent and often inadequate attention she received from a parade of short-term, underpaid aides. Thomas, overwhelmed and resentful, became increasingly abusive, his frustration boiling over into harsh words and neglect. The once dignified elder of the household became a prisoner of her own temper and her son's profound inadequacy, confined to a wheelchair in an increasingly squalid environment. Lily, my brave, resilient Lily, was my anchor through it all. She spent weekdays with me, thriving in our quiet, independent apartment, soaking up the newfound peace and stability. She blossomed in school, her grades improving, her shy demeanor replaced by a quiet confidence. On weekends, she would reluctantly go to Thomas's house, returning with tales of chaos, unkempt rooms, and her grandmother's increasingly desperate pleas for attention. I saw the toll it was taking on her, the quiet sadness in her eyes when she spoke of her father's unraveling, the burden of witnessing his decline. It broke my heart, but it strengthened my resolve. I had to protect her from that toxic environment, to ensure her childhood was not poisoned by their dysfunction. My legal team, comprised of a sharp family lawyer, Miss Evelyn Reed, known for her formidable courtroom presence, and a tenacious forensic accountant, Mr. David Chen, began to meticulously build my case. I wasn't just seeking a divorce, I was seeking justice, full and absolute. I meticulously documented every instance of financial manipulation, every empty promise, every abusive remark, every minute of my unpaid labor. I presented comprehensive evidence of my lost earning potential as an architect, the years of professional growth I had sacrificed, and the profound emotional distress caused by their relentless contempt. The legal battle was bitter, drawn out, and emotionally exhausting, lasting nearly 2 years. But I refused to yield. Every tactic they employed to discredit me only fueled my determination. Thomas, initially dismissive and arrogant, quickly realized the gravity of my claims when Evelyn Reed presented the overwhelming evidence in court. His legal team tried to portray me as a bitter, vengeful ex-wife, attempting to extort money. They brought up my initial agreement to be a stay-at-home mother and caregiver, painting me as a capricious woman who suddenly abandoned her responsibilities. But the evidence, compiled with the same meticulous detail I once applied to architectural plans, was irrefutable. My detailed logs of Beatrice's round-the-clock care, the hospital bills I had to borrow money for, the stark contrast between Thomas's exorbitant income and my paltry allowance, the documented instances of his verbal abuse and financial control, it all painted a damning picture of systemic exploitation. The turning point came when Lily, with remarkable courage for a child her age, spoke to a child psychologist appointed by the court. She recounted her observations with chilling clarity: her grandmother's increasing neglect under Thomas's care, her father's violent outbursts of frustration, the stark difference in atmosphere between my calm, nurturing new home and his increasingly chaotic one. Her innocent testimony, unvarnished and sincere, was more powerful than any legal argument, stripping away Thomas's carefully constructed facade of the responsible, burdened patriarch. The judge, a formidable woman known for her no-nonsense approach and keen insight into family dynamics, saw through Thomas's carefully constructed facade. She ordered a comprehensive review of his finances, and, based on the overwhelming evidence of his financial control, emotional abuse, and direct neglect, ruled decisively in my favor. I received a substantial settlement, not just a portion of his assets, but significant compensation for my decades of unpaid labor, for my lost career earnings, and for the profound emotional suffering I had endured. More importantly, I was granted sole custody of Lily, protecting her from the toxic environment of her father's home, ensuring she had a stable, loving foundation for her future. Thomas lost far more than just money. His reputation, once pristine, was irrevocably tarnished. The scandal, splashed across local news outlets, led to his forced resignation from his high-profile tech job. His lavish lifestyle, built on an illusion of effortless success, crumbled. He was forced to sell the sprawling home I had once managed, to downsize dramatically, and to face the stark reality of a life stripped bare of the comforts and conveniences I had meticulously provided. He tried to rebuild his career, but the whispers followed him, the lawsuits lingered, and he found himself ostracized by the very corporate elite he had so desperately sought to impress. Beatrice, without my consistent patient care, was eventually moved to a state-run facility. Her final years were spent in sterile anonymity, stripped of the luxuries and personal attention she had once demanded. I felt no joy in their downfall, only a quiet, resolute sense of justice. They had called me useless, a servant, a burden. They had stripped me of my dignity, my career, my financial independence. Now, they were left with the bitter consequences of their contempt, forced to confront their own profound inadequacies. The universe, in its own silent way, had balanced the scales. Lily thrived. She excelled in school, pursued her passions in art and literature, and grew into a confident, independent young woman, a testament to the strength and resilience she had witnessed in her mother. She graduated at the top of her class, earned a scholarship to a prestigious university, and pursued her own dreams, free from the shadows of her father's failures. Ilda Vance, the architect, flourished once more. My new firm, Vance & Associates, specializing in sustainable, community-focused design, gained national recognition. We designed innovative, eco-friendly schools, affordable housing complexes that truly uplifted communities, and vibrant public spaces. I built structures that truly mattered, homes and community centers that fostered connection and dignity, a stark contrast to the hollow grandeur of my previous life. My days were once again filled with the creative challenges I loved, the satisfaction of seeing my designs come to life, and the respect of my peers. As I sit here today, in my sun-drenched studio apartment overlooking the vibrant city skyline, a city where my own designs now stand tall, I reflect on the journey. At 63, I am no longer defined by the roles others imposed on me. I am Ilda, the architect, the mother, the survivor, the woman who learned the hard way that kindness should never be practiced at the cost of self-destruction. The scars of the past remain, faint but present, reminders of the battle fought and won, but they are overshadowed by the profound sense of peace, self-worth, and unshakable freedom I have found. The message I carry, the wisdom etched into my very soul, is this: never let others define your worth. Never allow kindness to be mistaken for weakness. And never ever let anyone take what is rightfully yours, your dignity, your peace, your self-respect, just because they are called family. Sometimes, the most powerful act of love is also the most powerful act of self-preservation. When you finally stand your ground, when you dare to say no to injustice, even when it comes from your own blood, you don't just reclaim your property or your finances. You reclaim control over your entire life. And that, I assure you, is the most profound victory of all. I had given them what they truly deserved, the opportunity to live with the consequences of their own choices, unburdened by my silent strength. And in doing so, I had finally given myself what I truly deserved, a life lived on my own terms, free and whole.